The wedding banquet hall of the peninsula Shanghai glittered like a cage of crystal and gold. Lin Zhihe stood at the center of it, wearing white, a gown that cost more than her mother's apartment, pearls at her throat that belonged to the Xu family for 3 generations. Her hands were steady, her spine was straight, her face held the perfect porcelain stillness of a woman who had learned never to let the world see her bleed. Beside her, Xu Yanjin accepted another toast, his smile effortless, his posture relaxed. He looked every inch the Playboy heir, charming, careless, untouchable. His black suit was immaculate, his gold cufflinks caught the light each time he raised his glass. Someone laughed loudly at the main table, a socialite whispered behind her fan. Su Ruyan sat 3 seats away, her smile sharp enough to cut silk. And Zhihe thought, I have just sold myself to a man who will never love me. She lifted her champagne glass, the bubbles blurred the chandeliers into soft, distant stars. Xu Yanjin leaned close, so close his breath brushed her ear. The room watched, the room always watched. Smile, he murmured, his voice velvet and steel. You're making them wonder. She smiled. It did not reach her eyes. He noticed. 3 months earlier, the Lin family had once been respectable, old Shanghai scholars, professors, intellectuals. But respectability did not pay the bills when your father died of a sudden heart attack, leaving behind debts, a crumbling reputation, and a son who needed surgery that insurance would not cover. Zhihe learned early that grief was a luxury. She learned to calculate, to plan, to survive. By 26, she was a financial analyst at a mid-tier firm, sharp enough to catch the attention of people who mattered, quiet enough to never threaten them. She lived in a small apartment in Jing'an, sent money home every month, and kept her dreams folded small inside her chest, like letters she would never mail. Then her brother, Lin Zhihe, was diagnosed with a rare cardiac condition. The surgery would cost 2 million yuan. The waiting list was 6 months. The hospital would not move faster without connections she did not have. She had 3 weeks to find a miracle. The miracle arrived in the form of Xu Yanjin's personal assistant, a crisp, efficient woman who appeared at Zhihe's office with a black folder and a contract. The Xu family requires a wife for the 2nd son. Your profile has been selected. Zhihe stared at the folder. I don't even know him. You don't need to. The terms are simple. 18 months of marriage, you will attend all required social functions, maintain a flawless public image, and produce no scandals. In exchange, your brother's surgery will be scheduled next week at the finest cardiac center in Shanghai. The Xu family will cover all medical expenses, plus a separate compensation of 5 million yuan upon completion of the contract. Zhihe's hands were very still on her lap. And Mr. Xu Yanjin, she asked carefully, what does he want from this? The assistant's expression did not change. Mr. Xu wants to be left alone to conduct his life as he pleases. You will provide the appearance of stability that his father requires. Beyond that, you will have no expectations of him. No expectations. She understood perfectly. She was not being asked to marry a man. She was being asked to become furniture, elegant, silent, and entirely within the Xu family's control. She thought of her brother's pale face in the hospital bed. She thought of her mother's trembling hands. She thought of the debt collectors who called at midnight and the way the world crushed people who could not pay its price. She signed. The first time she saw Xu Yanjin in person was at the contract signing. He was late by 23 minutes, she counted, and he entered the room like he owned it, which he essentially did. The lawyers straightened. The assistants stopped breathing. He was taller than his photos suggested. His features were precise, aristocratic, the kind of face that looked carved rather than born. But it was his eyes that stopped her. dark, observant, moving over her with the slow assessment of a man who was used to appraising value. He looked at her for a long moment, then he smiled, a public smile, polished and empty. "So you're the one who said yes." She met his gaze without flinching. "You're the one who asked." His smile deepened slightly, and something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or the first spark of interest. He took the seat across from her, draped one arm over the back of his chair, and studied her with the patience of a predator who had never needed to rush. "My father chose you," he said. "I only agreed. Then we're both here for practical reasons." "Are we?" She slid the contract toward him, her fingers precise, her voice even. "Your family needs a wife on paper. My family needs medical care. Neither of us is under any illusion about romance." He picked up the pen. For a moment he simply held it, watching her. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who would pretend." She tilted her head slightly. "I don't have the energy for pretending. I have a brother who needs to live." He signed. She signed. And in that sterile conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Huangpu River, they became husband and wife in the eyes of the law and the Xu family's lawyers. Neither of them looked at each other as they left. The wedding was a spectacle. Shanghai elite society had not seen such an event in years. The Xu family's notoriously unmarriageable second son suddenly producing a bride, and not a socialite or heiress, but a quiet financial analyst from a faded intellectual family. The whispers began before the first toast was poured. Who is she? What does he want with her? How long until he tires of her? Zhihe endured it all with the same calm stillness she brought to everything. She smiled when required. She spoke when addressed. She stood beside her new husband like a painting beside its frame, complementary, decorative, and entirely separate. On their wedding night, the penthouse was silent. Xu Yanjin stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his tie loosened, his silhouette sharp against the lights of Lu Yazhu. He did not look at her as she entered. She stood in the doorway, still in her gown, and waited. "You can take the master bedroom," he said finally, his voice distant, unhurried. "Don't worry, I won't touch what isn't mine." She felt something tighten in her chest, relief, perhaps, or the strange ache of being so clearly dismissed. She had expected this. She had prepared for this, but knowing and feeling were two different things. "Good night, Mr. Xu," she said. "Mrs. Xu," he replied, and there was something in the way he said it, a testing, a tasting of the words, that made her pause for just a moment before she walked away. She did not look back. If she had, she might have seen him standing motionless at the window, his reflection caught in the glass, watching her retreat with an expression that was not indifference at all. The first month. They became experts at distance. She learned his routines: up at 6, black coffee, no breakfast, out the door by 7. He was at Xu Group headquarters most days until 9 or 10 at night. When he returned, he moved through the penthouse like a ghost, silent, efficient, never lingering. She kept to her own spaces, the study where she worked remotely, the small garden terrace where she drank tea in the afternoons, the master bedroom with its cold, impersonal luxury. They crossed paths at breakfast sometimes, exchanged polite nods, and went their separate ways. But she noticed things. She noticed that the coffee machine was always refilled before she woke, that the tea she preferred, white peony, not the oolong the staff had initially stocked, appeared in the kitchen without her mentioning it, that the temperature of the penthouse shifted slightly in the evenings, warmer in her areas, cooler in his. She told herself it was the staff's efficiency. She did not ask. The first public appearance. The charity gala at the Waldorf Astoria was her debut as Mrs. Xu Yanjin, and she wore midnight blue silk and her armor of stillness. She expected to be ignored, tolerated at best. Instead, she found herself at the center of a social ecosystem she had only observed from the outside, women who smiled without warmth, men who measured her value in connections and bloodlines, whispers that followed her like silk scarves trailing through the air. She handled it with the same quiet competence she brought to everything. She remembered names. She asked questions that made people feel interesting. She deflected the sharp-edged inquiries about her background with gentle, unbreakable politeness. And through it all, Xu Yanjin watched. He was across the room, surrounded by his usual crowd, Su Ruyan at his elbow, laughing at something he said, her hand on his sleeve. He looked every inch the Playboy, champagne in hand, smile easy, attention scattered. But every time Zhihe looked up, his eyes were on her. Not staring, never staring, just present, aware, a constant low-level attention that she felt like pressure against her skin. When a man approached her, an investment banker, handsome, interested, and began a conversation that lasted longer than was strictly polite, she felt the weight of Yanjin's gaze shift. He did not interrupt, he did not approach. He simply stood where he was, smile still in place, Su Ruyan still at his side, and watched. And Zhihe understood, with a clarity that settled cold in her stomach, that he was marking territory without ever saying a word. 2 months into the marriage, Jihe's mother called with news that made her blood freeze. Zichen's recovery had been progressing well until the hospital informed them that a paperwork error had delayed his follow-up treatment. The surgery had been successful, but the post-operative care was critical, and any interruption could undo everything. Jihe spent 6 hours on the phone, navigating bureaucracy, fighting through automated systems, getting nowhere. The hospital administrators were sympathetic but unhelpful. The paperwork would take at least 2 weeks to resolve. She hung up the final call at midnight, exhausted and furious, and found Xu Yanjin standing in the doorway of the study. He was in a dark silk robe, his hair slightly disheveled, his expression unreadable. He held a glass of water in one hand, not for himself, she realized, but for her. "You should sleep," he said quietly. "I need to fix this first." "What's wrong?" She hesitated. They did not discuss personal matters. Their marriage was a transaction, carefully contained, professionally managed. Asking for help would mean blurring lines she had drawn very clearly. But Zichen was her brother. Zichen was everything. She told him. He listened without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. When she finished, he set the glass of water on the desk beside her. "Go to bed. I'll handle it." "You don't have to." "I said I'll handle it." His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. There was something in it, a finality, a weight that made her stop arguing. She went to bed. The next morning, the hospital called. The paperwork had been miraculously resolved. Zichen's treatment would proceed as scheduled. The administrator who spoke to her was almost trembling with eagerness to help. Jihe hung up and sat very still for a long time. She had not asked for this. He had not told her he was doing it. He had simply fixed it, like moving furniture, like solving a problem that should never have existed in the first place. She found him in the kitchen that evening, making coffee. He looked up when she entered, his expression calm, unhurried. "The hospital called." "Good. Why didn't you tell me?" He poured his coffee, stirred it slowly, methodically. "Would you have accepted if I asked?" She opened her mouth to say yes, then stopped. No, she would have refused. She would have insisted on handling it herself, on maintaining the careful distance between them, on proving that she did not need him. He knew that. He had known it better than she did. "You don't have to be grateful," he said, his back to her now. "It's what anyone would do." It was not what anyone would do. She knew that. She knew that the Xu family's power, the weight of his name, the phone calls he could make with a single word, none of it was for her. She was a contract, a convenience, a decorative piece in the corner of his life. And yet, "Thank you," she said quietly. He did not turn around, but his hands paused on the coffee cup just for a moment, and she thought she saw his shoulders relax slightly. "You're welcome, Lin Zhihe." He used her full name, not Mrs. Xu, not the social mask. Her name, spoken carefully, like it mattered. She left the kitchen before she could wonder why her heart was beating faster than it should. 3 months in. The change was gradual, almost imperceptible, like winter softening into spring, the cold still present but something new pressing through the frozen ground. He began staying home more, not with her exactly. He worked in his study, made calls on the terrace, moved through the penthouse with the same silent efficiency. But he was there. The weight of his presence settled into the spaces she inhabited, became background, then habit, then something she started to anticipate. She found herself listening for his footsteps in the evening, not waiting, never waiting, but aware, attuned. She hated it. She hated the way her pulse quickened when he walked into a room, the way her eyes followed him before she could stop them, the particular way he said her name. He was not supposed to be real to her. He was a contract, a transaction, a means to an end. She had planned this carefully, 18 months, then freedom, then a life she built entirely for herself. She had not planned for the way he looked at her when he thought she was not looking. The gala. She went with Gu Baichen. It was a work event. Her firm was consulting for his company, and he had invited her as a professional courtesy. He was a good man, calm, respectful, genuinely kind. When he smiled at her, it was warm, uncomplicated, easy. She had not told Yanjin she was going with someone else. It did not occur to her that she needed to. She wore emerald green that night, a departure from her usual restraint, a small rebellion against the Xu family's expectations. Gu Baichen complimented her with genuine warmth, offered his arm, and led her into the glittering hall. The evening was pleasant. The conversation was intelligent. Gu Baichen made her laugh, not the careful social laugh she had perfected, but something real, something unguarded. She did not notice Xu Yanjin until she turned from the bar and found him standing 10 feet away. He was dressed in black, as always, his gold cufflinks catching the light. His expression was pleasant, his posture was relaxed, but his eyes were not pleasant. They moved over her slowly, deliberately, taking in the green dress, Gu Baichen's hand on her arm, the champagne glass she was holding. His smile did not waver, but something in the air between them changed, tightened, sharpened, became charged with a tension that made her breath catch. "Mrs. Xu," he said, and the words were a brand. "I didn't expect to see you here." She stepped away from Gu Baichen, her composure settling back into place. "A work event. Mr. Gu was kind enough to include me." "Kind," Yanjin repeated, and the word was flat. His eyes moved to Gu Baichen, measured, assessed, dismissed. "I'm sure he was." Gu Baichen, to his credit, did not flinch. "Mr. Xu, I've heard excellent things about your work with the new development project."
"Have you?" The silence stretched, uncomfortable, weighted. Zhihe felt the attention of the room shifting toward them, the whispers starting, the speculation blooming. She touched Gu Baichen's arm lightly. "Perhaps we should—" "Stay," Yanjin said, and his voice was soft, almost gentle. "I'd hate to interrupt your evening." He smiled at her. It was the smile he used in boardrooms, in negotiations, in moments before he made a move no one expected. She knew that smile now. She had learned to read the danger behind it. "Actually," she said, her voice steady, "I was just leaving. I have an early meeting tomorrow." She turned to Gu Baichen, offered a polite farewell, and walked toward the exit without looking back. She made it to the elevator before Yanjin caught up with her. His hand closed around her wrist, not hard, not painful, but immovable. He guided her into the elevator, pressed the button for the lobby, and stood beside her in silence as the doors closed. "Lin Zhihe,"
he said quietly. She did not answer. He released her wrist slowly, his fingers lingering for a moment before letting go. When she finally looked at him, his face was composed, his expression mild, but his eyes were dark, focused, burning with something that made her stomach tighten. You went with another man. Not a question. It was a work event. You wore green. What? Green, he repeated, and there was something in his voice, something rough, something unguarded. You never wear green. You told me you prefer neutral colors. You said they're easier to manage. She had told him that, weeks ago, over a breakfast they had shared in rare, unforced conversation. She had not thought he was listening. You remembered that. I remember everything about you. The words fell between them like stones into still water. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Neither of them moved. He stepped forward, just slightly, just enough to bring them closer than propriety allowed. His voice when he spoke was barely a whisper. Lin Zhihe, don't test how patient I am. She looked up at him, met those dark, dangerous eyes, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not exactly, but a recognition, a warning, a door opening that she had told herself would stay closed. I'm not testing anything. I'm living my life, the way we agreed. The way we agreed, he repeated, and something flickered across his face. Amusement, perhaps, or pain. Yes, of course. He stepped back. The tension between them eased, but did not disappear. It settled into something deeper, something that hummed beneath every word, every glance, every moment they spent in the same room. Your car is waiting, he said, his voice neutral again. I'll see you at home. Home. The word should have meant nothing. It was a penthouse, an address, a temporary arrangement. But when he said it, it sounded like something else entirely. She walked out of the elevator without answering. She did not look back, but she felt his eyes on her all the way to the car. 5 months in. He started calling her. Not for anything important, not for any reason she could name, just calls. In the morning to ask if she had eaten breakfast, in the afternoon to tell her about a meeting that went well, late at night when she was already in bed to say goodnight. She stopped answering them. It was a small rebellion, a thin line she drew between them. She told herself it was necessary. He was becoming too familiar, too present, too much. She had not signed up for this quiet invasion, this slow erosion of the boundaries she had built. He did not comment when she stopped picking up. He did not mention it when they crossed paths in the penthouse. He simply adapted. Her office received better coffee. Her commute was suddenly smoother, inexplicably free of traffic. Her brother's hospital room was upgraded to a private suite with a view of the gardens. She noticed everything. She said nothing, but she started answering his calls again. She kept a notebook in the drawer of her bedside table. It was where she wrote everything she could not say, her fears, her plans, her dreams of a future where she belonged to no one. She had kept such notebooks since she was a girl, her words the only private space she had ever owned. She wrote about Zichen's recovery, about the small consulting business she was building, the clients she was cultivating, the quiet steps she was taking toward independence. She wrote about the Xu family's expectations, the weight of their name, the way she felt like a chess piece in a game she did not understand. She did not write about Xu Yanjin. She did not write about the way her hands trembled when he was near, the way she dreamed of his voice, his hands, the particular slant of his smile when he looked at her, the way she had started to feel, somewhere deep and dangerous, that she was losing something she had never meant to give. She did not write any of that, but she thought about it, constantly. She came home early one evening, her head full of numbers and deadlines, and found him in her study. He was standing by her desk, her notebook open in his hands. The world stopped. She stood in the doorway frozen while her blood turned to ice. That notebook was hers, private, secret, the only space she had ever kept for herself. He looked up when she entered. His face was unreadable, but something in his eyes, something raw, something hungry, made her breath catch. "You wrote about leaving," he said quietly. "You wrote about a future where you never depended on anyone." She stepped forward, her hands shaking, and pulled the notebook from his grip. "You had no right." "I know. You went through my things. You invaded my privacy. I know." His voice was calm, too calm, the calm of something held together by sheer force of will. She clutched the notebook to her chest, her heart pounding, her composure cracking along fault lines she had not known existed. "What were you looking for?" "I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare, unguarded gesture. "You. I was looking for you." "That doesn't make any sense." "None of this makes sense." He took a step toward her, then stopped. His hands were at his sides, his posture controlled, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. "You live in my house, you wear my name, you sleep 20 feet away from me every night, and I don't know you at all." That was the agreement.
The agreement. He laughed softly, bitterly. "Do you know what I thought when I first saw you in that conference room with your quiet voice and your still hands and your eyes that saw right through me?" She did not answer. "I thought this one will be easy, quiet, obedient, grateful. She'll do what she's told, stay out of my way, and leave when I tell her to." His voice dropped. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "I was wrong." She took a step back. He followed. "You're not quiet. You're controlled. You're not obedient. You're strategic. You're not grateful. You're calculating. And you—" His voice cracked, just slightly, just enough to show her the man beneath the mask. "You have never once looked at me like you wanted anything I could give you." "Because I don't." "Liar." The word hung between them, sharp and bright. She lifted her chin. "You call this protection? Invading my privacy? Reading my private thoughts?" He moved closer, and this time she did not retreat. He was close enough to touch, close enough to see the rapid pulse at her throat, the slight tremor in her lips. "I call it making sure no one can take you away from me." The words were quiet, honest, terrifying. She stared at him, her heart pounding, her mind racing. This was not supposed to happen. He was not supposed to want her. He was a playboy, a contract, a means to an end. He was not supposed to look at her like she was the only thing in the room. "I am not yours," she said, and her voice was steady, even as everything inside her trembled. "I signed a contract. I agreed to 18 months. That is all." Something shifted in his expression, the mask cracking, something raw and desperate bleeding through. 18 months, he repeated. "And then what?" "And then I leave." Leave. The word seemed to hurt him. She watched him swallow it, force it down, bury it behind his perfect composure. "Where would you go?" "Somewhere I belong to no one." He was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, slowly, giving her time to move away, and touched her face. His fingers were cool against her cheek, his touch impossibly gentle. "You belong to me, Lin Zhihe. You have since the moment you signed your name." She should have pulled away. She should have walked out, slammed the door, reinforced every boundary he was breaking. She did not move. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I know your brother's favorite food is hot pot. I know you drink white peony tea because your father drank it. I know you hum when you're concentrating, that you bite your lip when you're nervous, that you dream about a cottage somewhere with a garden and no phone signal." Her breath caught. "I know you write your fears in a notebook because you can't say them aloud. I know you're building a business so you never have to depend on anyone. I know you lie awake at night planning your escape." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers, his voice a breath against her lips. "I know you, Lin Zhihe. I know you better than you know yourself." She closed her eyes. She should hate him for this, for the invasion, the obsession, the way he had dismantled her defenses without asking permission.
But beneath the fear, beneath the anger, there was something else, something that ached, something that recognized the desperate loneliness in his voice, the hunger in his eyes. "I can't be what you want," she said, and her voice broke on the words. "I can't be owned." "I don't want to own you." "Then what do you want?" He was silent. His thumb traced her cheekbone, her jaw, the corner of her mouth. His eyes were dark, hungry, filled with something that looked terrifyingly like love. "I want you to choose me." She opened her eyes. "I want you to stay because you want to, not because you have to. I want you to look at me the way you look at your brother, like I matter, like I'm worth something to you." His hand fell away. He stepped back, giving her space, giving her air. "I know I don't know how to love. I know I confuse control with care, possession with devotion. I know I'm dangerous for someone like you." He smiled, and it was the most honest expression she had ever seen on his face. Painful, hopeful, terrified. "But I'm learning. For you, I'm learning." She stood in the center of her study, her notebook pressed against her chest, her walls in ruins around her. And for the first time in her life, Lin Zhihe did not know what to do. She left him on a Tuesday. It was not dramatic. There were no slammed doors, no tearful confrontations, no final cutting words. She packed one suitcase, left her wedding rings on the bedside table, and walked out of the penthouse while he was at work. She did not leave a note. She did not leave an address. She simply went. The apartment she rented was small, in a neighborhood that did not know the Xu family name. She slept on a borrowed mattress, ate noodles from the shop downstairs, and woke every morning to the sound of street vendors and her own racing heart. She thought she would feel free. She felt empty. He did not call. She had expected fury, phone calls, threats, the full weight of the Xu family descending to drag her back. Instead, there was silence. Days of it, weeks of it. She told herself it was what she wanted. She told herself he had finally understood. She told herself she was free. But at night, alone in her small apartment, she found herself listening for his footsteps, waiting for his voice, missing the weight of his presence like a limb she had not known she needed. Gu Beishen found her at a coffee shop near her office 3 weeks after she left. He sat across from her without asking, ordered tea for them both, and waited. "You look terrible," he said finally. She laughed, a hollow, startled sound. "Thank you." "He's looking for you." Her hands tightened around her cup. "I don't want to be found." "He knows that. That's why he hasn't found you." She looked up. Gu Beishen's expression was kind, patient, undemanding. He was everything Yanjin was not, safe, steady, uncomplicated. She could have loved him, she thought, if things were different, if her heart had not already been claimed. "He wants you to choose," Gu Beishen said quietly. "He wants you to come back because you want to, not because he made you." That's what he told me when he came to my office 3 days after you left and asked me to take care of you." She stared at him. "He asked you?" He said. Gu Beishen paused, something flickering across his face. He said, "If she won't come back to me, at least let her be somewhere safe. Let her be somewhere she can breathe." She closed her eyes. She had not expected this. She had expected control, obsession, the suffocating weight of his need. She had not expected him to let her go. "He's changed," Gu Beishen said. "Or maybe he was always this. Maybe you were the only one who could see it." She opened her eyes. "I don't know what to do." "You don't have to know. That's the point of choosing. You can take your time. You can figure out what you want." He reached across the table, took her hand, squeezed it gently. "But if you want my opinion," he smiled, warm and slightly sad, "he's not the man you married. And I think you're not the woman who signed that contract either." She went back on a Saturday. The penthouse was the same cold luxury, the same floor-to-ceiling windows, the same view of Lu Shazi glittering across the river. But something was different. The tea in the kitchen was white peony. The temperature in the hallway was warmer. Her study was exactly as she had left it, her notebook still on the desk, untouched. She found him in the living room, sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. He looked up when she entered. His face was drawn, thinner than she remembered, shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He was still in his work clothes, his tie loosened, his cufflinks missing. He did not move, did not speak, simply watched her, his eyes dark and hungry and terrified. She walked toward him slowly, her footsteps soft on the marble floor. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the tension in his jaw, the slight tremor in his hands. "I'm not coming back to the contract," she said quietly. He nodded, once. "I know. I'm not coming back because I have to. I'm not coming back because I'm obligated." He said nothing. His hands were very still on his knees. She took a step closer. "I'm coming back because I want to. Because I've been away for 3 weeks and I've never been more miserable in my life. Because I miss the way you look at me. Because I miss the way you say my name. Because—" Her voice broke. She steadied herself. "Because I think I might love you, and I hate it. I hate that you saw me, really saw me, when I spent my whole life being invisible. I hate that you took my walls apart without asking permission. I hate that I can't imagine my future without you in it." She was crying now, silent tears she could not stop, did not want to stop. He stood. He moved toward her slowly, carefully, like she was something that might shatter. His hands rose to her face, cupped her cheeks, wiped her tears away with thumbs that trembled. "Lin Zhihe," he said, and his voice was rough, broken, beautiful. "I don't deserve you. I know I don't. I've been selfish and controlling, and I don't know how to love without—" "I don't want perfect," she whispered. "I want you, the real you, the one who refills the coffee machine before I wake, the one who remembers my father's tea, the one who—" She laughed, wet and shaky. "The one who asked the man I went to a gala with to take care of me because you knew I needed space." He closed his eyes, his forehead pressed against hers. "I don't know how to be someone who doesn't want to protect you. I don't know how to be someone who doesn't need to know you're safe. I don't know how to love you without—" "Then don't." He opened his eyes. She reached up, touched his face, traced the lines of exhaustion, the shadow of fear, the shape of his mouth. "Don't love me without it. Just learn to trust me. Learn to let me fight my own battles. Learn to let me choose you every day because I want to, not because you made it impossible for me to leave." He pulled her into his arms. It was not a gentle embrace. It was desperate, fierce, the hold of a man who had spent 3 weeks waiting for something he was not sure would ever come. His face buried in her hair, his arms wrapped around her like she was the only thing holding him together. "I thought you wouldn't come back," he said against her ear, his voice breaking. "I almost didn't. Why did you come?" She held him tighter, breathed him in, let the walls she had built so carefully finally crumble. "Because you let me go." He laughed, a broken, beautiful sound. "That's why? You loved me enough to let me breathe. You loved me enough to choose my freedom over your need. You loved me—" She pulled back, looked at him, saw the man beneath the mask. "You loved me the way I always wanted to be loved, without chains." He kissed her. It was not the kiss she had imagined, if she had imagined it, which she had more times than she would admit. It was soft, tentative, a question asked with trembling hands and closed eyes and a heart laid bare. She answered. 6 months later. The garden was small, tucked behind the cottage in Suzhou, with climbing roses and a stone bench and a view of the canal. It was nothing like the penthouse. No marble floors, no floor-to-ceiling windows, no view of the Shanghai skyline. It was theirs. She sat on the bench, her notebook open on her lap, watching him work in the garden. He was in old clothes, his sleeves rolled up, dirt on his hands, a line of concentration between his brows. He looked nothing like the Playboy heir who had signed a contract 18 months earlier. He looked like home. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "I'm admiring." He looked up then, a smile tugging at his mouth. Admiring what, exactly? "You." She closed her notebook, set it aside, and held out her hand. "Come here." He came. He always came when she called, but not with the desperate rush of those early days, not with the fear that she would disappear. He came slowly, easily, with the confidence of a man who knew she was not going anywhere. He sat beside her on the bench, pulled her against his side, pressed a kiss to her temple. "What are you writing?" he asked. "Nothing." She leaned into him, felt his arm tighten around her. "Everything." He laughed softly. "Cryptic." She tilted her head, looked up at him. The sunlight caught his face, softened the sharp angles, lit the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I'm writing about the future," she said. "The one I'm building, the one we're building." His expression softened. "And what does it look like?" She looked out at the garden, the cottage, the quiet canal. She thought of the woman she had been, the one who signed a contract because she had no other choice, who built walls to protect herself, who was so afraid of being owned that she almost missed being loved. She thought of the man beside her, the one who had learned to let go, to trust, to love without chains. "It looks like this," she said quietly. "It looks like breathing." He was silent for a moment, then he turned her face to his, kissed her with the same tenderness he had shown that first night, when he had said, "I won't touch what isn't mine." "This time," he said against her lips, "I'm choosing you, not because I have to, but because you finally let me breathe." She smiled. It reached her eyes.
They never renewed the contract. There was no need. What they had was not written in legal documents, not bound by terms and conditions, not measured in months or years. It was written in small things: morning tea, shared silence, hands reaching for each other in the dark. Lin Zhihe never became the quiet, obedient wife the Xu family had wanted. She became something else entirely. A woman who built her own business, who spoke her own mind, who stood beside her husband as an equal, not a decoration. Xu Yanjin never became the Playboy again. That mask was retired, forgotten, unnecessary. In its place was something real, a man who had learned that love was not possession, that protection was not control, that the most powerful thing he could do was let her go. But she never went. She stayed, every day, every night, every moment of every year that followed. She stayed because she wanted to, because she chose to, because freedom was not the absence of love, but the space to choose it. She still kept a notebook, but now, when she wrote about the future they were building together, about the garden in Suzhou, about the way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching, about the quiet miracle of a love that had started as a contract and become something neither of them had ever dared to dream. She wrote about him, and when she closed the notebook at night, he was there, waiting, patient, his arms open, his heart open, his love finally, completely free.